And may I ask and introduce our third speaker, a renowned scholar, so we might hear yet another dimension of the same topic is Archimandrite Sevil Hovorun, a professor of ecclesiology and international relations and ecumenism. He is a scholar of contemporary orthodoxy, and his main fields of expertise are the early Christian traditions and ecclesiology. As a research fellow at Yale University, he has worked on the project about the church in the public square, focusing on the patterns of social behavior of the Eastern churches. Father Hovorun taught theology in more than 50 universities around the globe. He is a member of the World Council of Churches, and he is the former head of the External Relationships Committee of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church. Please, Father Cyril, may we hear your...
Thank you so much. Thank you. I also need to apologize for my appearance, which is not very smart and very formal. Again, even though I left my luggage actually in Ukraine just before leaving the country. And I'm wandering now in the Western European countries, speaking, meeting people, and having dialogues and conversations about the situation in Ukraine, like this one. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for organizing this important conference. And I think in the future we'll have more and more conferences, conversations on peace, reconciliation, and so forth. Actually, I'm very glad that two previous speakers made a very clear link between the present war and the Second World War in Europe. The similarities are striking. Of course, there is always a temptation to overstretch similarities, to overstretch analogies. It's something that we need to avoid in order to have a serious conversation, to have a serious kind of reflection about how to deal with the present situation. At the same time, I'm personally very much in favor of bridging the two wars, even though there are dissimilarities between them indeed. Well, why so? It was not us, I mean the Ukrainians who created this analogy or who invoked this analogy even. It was the Russian side who actually started to replicate the World War II in our present situation. To my, the Putin's regime has been named by many names and has been identified through a vast variety of analogies. I would identify Putin's regime as a regime of gamblers and as a regime of reconstructors, historical reconstructors, like, those who reconstruct the Viking Age or the Middle Ages. They come together for a week or so, and they set up camps, they have barbecue, they chat, they laugh, and then occasionally they dress in a fancy way in those medieval outfits. And then occasionally they have like pretensions of fight, like reconstructions of fighting. That's actually I believe how the war in Ukraine started, with the reconstructions, with the reconstructors. Remember, one of the proponents of the war that started, I should remind us, something that we in Ukraine remember very well, that this war started not in February 2022, but it started in February 2014, soon after the Revolution of Dignity, the Maidan won in Ukraine. And one of the prominent proponents of the war that started in 2014, Igor Girkin, was actually a real reconstructor. He reconstructed the events of the World War I. First in Russia, and then he came and he reconstructed the same kind of wars in Ukraine, with the only difference that he didn't have fun, he didn't have barbecue, he really killed people, executed in cold blood innocent civilians. It has been proven. So it started as a reconstruction, and it evolved to a reconstruction of a greater scale, with Putin himself playing a role of Stalin, or probably collective allies, winning what they call the Great Patriotic War. For him, this war in Ukraine is nothing more and nothing less than a Great Patriotic War. At least in the idea of the Great Patriotic War as it was constructed in the Soviet era. And that is another Soviet ghost that haunts us. And I completely agree with Professor Marynovych that there is a kind of profound Soviet legacy which is embedded in this war, including this idea of the Great Patriotic War, which is now fought, which is now waged by Putin in Ukraine, with the hope of having another Yalta, another agreement with the world to have a new world order, and he forces essentially what he considers great powers, the same great powers actually that existed during the World War II, the US, the UK. He forces the great powers in his mind to have another Yalta. So it's another reconstruction. Unfortunately, even the church has participated in this reconstruction, but the church reconstructs its own past, its own fantasies about the past, like, for example, the Byzantine Symphony, because essentially what the Russian church tries to get from Putin, from the Kremlin, is a sort of symphonic relationship with the state, with a special privileged position of the church in the Russian public square. So Russia plays, the Russian church and the patriarch of the Russian church is also, in a sense, a reconstructor of the Byzantine past. Well, all those reconstructions, they are far remote from the real past, of course. We understand that this is just a game. Of course, it's a very bloody game. It's a game that leads to bloodshed, but those who play this game, these games are actually gamblers. They are not really serious historical figures. They really try to imitate, they're imitators. They create simulacra of the past. And that's why I think they have failed to, they are destined to fail. And at the same time, they bring us to face a challenge, how to treat this game that they play. Should we treat this game with our own games, with our own gambling around justice, around reconciliation? My fear regarding this war, regarding the kind of aftermath of this war, is that we could have a new Nuremberg, we could have a tribunal, but it could be just another reconstruction, just another game, just another pretension. That is the danger. And I think we should not be like them, like the perpetrators, like those who started this war. We should not play games. We should not reconstruct our past, even if that past was really glorious, like Nuremberg, like denazification. We need to make it real. We need to make it happening in reality. And I think what is needed is a real tribunal, a real process of bringing to justice those who are responsible for this war, in order to avoid playing same games in the future. The same applies also to the idea of reconciliation and the idea of peace. When we talk about peace at any price, by giving up territories, by giving up sovereignty or whatever, I think it's just a game. Again, it's not about peace. It's not about a sustainable peace. What we need is really a sustainable peace, not just ephemeral, superficial, just a peaceful moment, ad hoc peace. It can be achieved easily, I think, if the Western powers push enough, the Ukrainian government, which is not very kind of solid still, the West has all mechanisms to push the Ukrainian government to have some kind of, peace, truce, or whatever. But it will be ephemeral if it is not based on justice, if it is not based on values, as Professor Marynovych mentioned. And we really need not just a just peace, we need a sustainable peace, a peace which will continue, which will last even after, the proponents of this war will go. Imagine if Putin is gone, this happy moment, like everyone will rejoice in Ukraine, of course, and probably the free borscht will be served across the country, everywhere. But this may be an illusion of happiness because Putin is gone and the Russian people immediately will elect another Putin. So what to do in order to avoid this scenario? What to pursue in order to achieve a sustainable peace? That's why I'm talking about a sustainable peace. I think for a sustainable peace, we need a real judgment, a real tribunal, and we need something that the Western power, the allies that won the World War II, achieved regarding Germany, a profound denazification. I know that particularly the UK government was very insistent on about the process of denazification after the World War II. Like, for example, they denazified the German universities, which were really imbued with Nazi ideology. And for example, the British insisted that all German professors who collaborated with the Nazis had to be purged, and the Americans said, no, not everyone should be purged, let us keep some. So there were discussions anyways, but it's not so important for us now, but it meant that there was at least an agreement, a consensus that the German psyche, the German soul, however mythical it was. Of course, it was mythical. There was not such a thing as a German soul, but certainly this idea of German soul helped Hitler to stay in power. So this German psyche had to be denazified, and it was successfully denazified, not just by defeating the German body, the body of the German people, but also through purging the German soul of all those demons that dwelt in this soul. The same should be done apparently to the Russian psyche, Russian soul. It's another mythical construct, Russian soul. And I know how many people in the West like this idea, are in love with this mythical concept of the Russian soul. There is no such a thing as Russian soul, of course. We know this from the human Christian anthropology, but there is a cultural construct called Russian soul that I think eventually led to this war, because this war is essentially a war of the Russian exceptionalism, of the Russian superiority based on spirituality, based on the idea that the Russian spirituality is special, is really loved by God, and God wants Russian soul to dominate the world. That is the idea. And the fact is that this soul, this mythical soul, has been possessed by demons and needs to be depossessed, needs to be exorcised through a profound process of deputinization, what I call deputinization, which is not very different from denazification, essentially. It's about deconstructing those wrong ideas that led to the catastrophe of the war. Yes, I'm actually closing now my remarks. So that's how we can prevent reoccurrence of the war in the future after Putin dies. And the last thing, very last thing, about reconciliation and peace. I think, yes, we will face more and more talks, conversations, and invitations and appeals to reconciliation and peace in the future, in the very close future. It has started already popping up here and there. I think for the Ukrainian people, in order to reconcile with someone else, first we need to reconcile with ourselves. We are really tormented by this war. Imagine that millions of people will be suffering from a post-traumatic syndrome, very kind of medically, literally. a lot of traumas, a lot of discontent, a lot of psychosis even will torment the Ukrainian people for years, if not decades, if not for generations, because a lot of children actually have been affected by this war. So the Ukrainian people, we need reconciliation first with ourselves. I'm speaking about psychological and psychiatric aspect, but also spiritual aspect of this problem. The church through this, and that after we reconcile with ourselves, after we overcome our traumas, will be easier for us to reconcile with others. So that would be my kind of roadmap for reconciliation, and we will have to discuss more details of this map in the future. Thank you for having me with you.